welcome back to the course. I've read a lot of comments in the previous video. The Discord is nearly ready to launch, and I now have 2 projects I am working on to add to the actual channel. I'll let you know more about them as I actually go. Your feedback has been truly amazing, and I'm really excited to show off what we'll actually be adding in the future. But today we'll be adding a drop handler to our enemies for our little roguelike game that we've been kind of designing. So we kind of want to try start finally wrapping up this mid-game loop, right? This is kind of core where we actually get to kind of do things in the game before the upgrade system and stuff. And one big part of that is actually having the enemies be able to steal coins from you, and then you be able to basically defeat them to get them back. And that's going to play into the karma system quite heavily. So I wanted to finish that off before we start moving into those systems. So yeah, player just has to bonk them enough on the head, get coins back, be a win. So let's actually get kind of to it. It's going to be a relatively simple system, and it's going to be really easy to set up. Now I have the base coin here. We don't actually need the base coin open. What we do need open, however, is the patroller enemy. So if you find a patroller enemy in your entity container in your main scene, go to scenes here. So we're actually on the container here. You've got all of your nodes in the left side. We're going to go and create a new node, 2D scene or 2D node. And we're just going to call this the drop underscore handler. I'm going to hit Control S and save. I'm going to go and save that inside of the handlers. I'm actually going to save it not inside the enemy or player folder. I'm going to save it as a more general handler because it's not just going to be the enemy that can drop things, right? We might want breakable crates or boxes or something like that that the player can destroy and get coins out of, just to add a little bit more like destructibility and fun to the game. So I want to have it more generalized. So let's go and add a script to our drop handler here. We're going to go and, as per usual, give it a class name. So class underscore name of drop handler. Now, we're going to be covering something that we haven't actually covered before. And it's a bit of a new thing for us, but it's very useful. And there's a whole thing behind this of what's best practice and when to use this sort of thing. And this is known as preloads. So preloads, or loading of a scene or preloading of a scene, will basically load something into memory as a reference, and then it will store that in memory if you preload it. And it does that the minute or the second that the script has been passed or the script is being read. So it's always kind of stored, which means if you do too many preloads, it can actually become a bit of a problem in larger kind of games. So you might want to switch to loading at certain times rather than preloading. But for us, all we have to do is preload, so we're good with that. Now to do that, first thing we're going to do is create an onReady var. So onReady var, this onReady var is going to be for our droppable item, right? So we're going to call it droppable underscore item. We're going to just set that to the type of packed scene. This is where the kind of preload comes in, because what we want to do is we want to load a scene, or at least we want to store the scene as kind of a variable at the moment, so we can kind of hold on to that and know what it is and where it is. So that's what we're doing. That's why we're setting it as a type packed scene, because that's what it is. It's a packed scene. It's a scene that needs to be unpacked, so to speak. So we're going to set that equal to a preload. So it now needs to go, okay, you want a packed scene and you want to preload that packed scene. Well, what packed scene do you want to preload? And it has to be a string. This is kind of the dangerous side with doing a preload like this, is it is a specific set path, which means if you change where that scene is located, it will crash, it will break, and it will not work. So you've got to go kind of careful with how you move your file structure around. Now, what do I actually want to preload? Well, the thing that it's going to be able to drop as a bare base foundation is going to be the base coin. So we want the base coin.tscn because that is the scene variant. So this, let me stretch this out, but there you go. This is kind of what the line should look like. And this, as I said before, is a droppable item of type packed scene, and we want it to preload this specific scene so we can then start doing things with that scene. So that's the packed scene sorted. We're going to want something else, right? We're going to want something that can keep count of how many coins this enemy now has. So if it hits the player, it takes a coin from the player. Now, there's not going to be any code to go, okay, take the coin from the player, add it to yourself, because we're already kind of handling half of that. With the health handler, it does damage to the player, the player's coin count goes down, and that's it. So what we can now do is we can create a var for current coins. So we'll call it current coin count, and we'll set that of type int, set it equal to 0 because we want it to be set to 0. Under the ready function, so I'm going to go create the ready, not the draw function, the ready function. I'm actually going to just go and set current coin count equal to 1. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because it will allow us to easily test this out. This isn't a necessary thing to do at all, but it will just allow me to go, okay, change this number or remove this number or set it to 0 just in case something in the future might modify it. And setting it to 1 right now will allow us to test it before we actually go into any of the actual dropping code, or not the dropping code, the actual kind of adding to it code. But speaking of adding to it code, we are going to actually create a very quick function for just adding the coin. And this is a kind of like a getter and a setter function, right? This is a setter function. We are setting something. So we're going to use, it's going to take a parameter of type value, or of, it will take a parameter that is named value of type int. So it'll be an integer value, and it will be having no return type, so we'll just return type it as void. And then all we have to do is go current coin count plus equals value. Now, what this gives us the ability to do is from any other script, we can now call this function when it has access to the drop handler, and we can pass in a value and it'll start incrementing the counter for us. That's great. Now, this won't be used immediately. This is something we'll be using after we give this a little test. Because now what we've got to do is create the ability to drop the coin. Now, when in the last video, the general refactors video, we set up a lot of kind of behind the scenes infrastructure around how we want to kind of start calling things and using certain things from an autoload. Now, if you don't quite remember that, a very quick refresher, go to my autoloads, we set up this script, the node extension script. And when I was going through it, I explained that we weren't going to use this soon, and now we are. And all this is doing is it's getting the containers for us so we can actually call these functions, these get container functions, in other scripts so we can actually grab these containers. What are these containers for? Well, they're for the entity container, the level container, camera, UI, and manage container in the main scene. This way it allows us to actually start adding things to these containers very quickly and easily without having to do any weird get parent, get tree, get node stuff. We can just get the container and go from there. So let's move back into our drop handler, and we'll create a new function, and we're just going to call this drop underscore coin. It won't need any parameters, and it will be of void return type. So what do we want to do? Well, the smart thing to do will be first grabbing, well, actually, we want to check, even smarter idea, if the current coin count is not less than or equal to 0. Because if it is, so if the current coin count is less than or equal to 0, then we just want to return out. We don't want to do anything because there's no coins to drop, so, well, we can't drop a coin. So what's basically the else? So, okay, the coin value is greater than 1, continue. What do we want to do? Well, we want to create a new variable. We'll call this the entity underscore container, because this is the container we're going to want to actually add our coin to. And then I will set that equal to node extensions. So we're calling that node extensions autoload. And then I'm going to write dot get underscore entity container. And because this will return the container for us, that's it, the container's done. Now, this is a unnecessary check that you can do. You could go if entity container is equal to null return. This will just make sure that for some reason, if your entity container doesn't exist, which it technically always should, but it's a sanity check. It's like, hey, if it doesn't exist, just do nothing. So unnecessary check, but sometimes caution is a good thing. So I'm just going to leave that in there because it doesn't really add anything or remove anything if we keep it or leave it. So I may as well leave it. So what's the next thing to do? Well, we now need to figure out how to create the coin, right? Because if we just try and add the coin in its packed scene state to a scene, it won't actually work because this is a packed scene, meaning it's just packed data. It's just data. It's not like a scene that we can mess around with and use, right? So we've got to figure out how to unpack it, so to speak. And the way we do that is by using the instantiate function. Now, what we want to do is create another new variable under our if container equals null state, or if check, and we want to call this new underscore coin underscore scene, because this is very specific, right? This is going to be the new coin, and it's the scene version, not the packed scene, the scene version. We want to set that equal to the droppable item dot instantiate. Now, I'm going to click or control left click on instantiate, and we'll read a little bit about instantiate right here. Instantiate node instantiate. Instantiates the scene's node hierarchy. Triggers child scene instantiations. Triggers a node notification scene instantiated notification on the root node. Basically what that's saying is this creates the actual scene from the data that is in the packed scene. It unpacks it for us. So with that created, with our entity container grabbed, with our coin counter checked, what else do we need? Well, we're going to need a location for us to actually place it, right? And easy way of doing that is by going var parent. So we're going to want to get the parent. Creating a variable for this, not entirely necessary, but a bit easier to explain. So we want a var for a parent, or a variable for a parent. We're going to set that equal to get underscore parent, and then we're going to use dot position. Now position won't appear immediately, right? You'll get a positional shadow, get mouse position. We just want dot position. Now the reason why the autocorrect on this isn't working is because the parent isn't typecasted to anything, right? If I do like a node 2D or a character body, and then I do position, we're still not getting it. That is fair. Let's try character body 2D. And then we'll try position again. We are still not getting it. Surprising. Well, either way, this works. We don't actually need to typecast it. So we are getting the position. So we need the position so we know exactly where to instantiate it, right? We don't want to place the coin somewhere random on the screen. We want to place it exactly where the parent or the little creature that we've had has been destroyed, right? So we've now got its position. So what else would we like to do here? I've also just figured out why this doesn't work. What I can do is show this off real quick. I can typecast this as a node 2D. See, this is the thing. Brain kicks in random times, right? So I can now create a new variable. You don't have to follow along with this. This is just me showing off the typecasting. And I can just go parent dot position. There you go. So that's getting the parent and then grabbing the position. But there's already a parent. Oh yeah, parent underscore pos. There we go. Yes, this is getting the parent, setting it as the type of node 2D, because it is going to be of type node 2D, or an offshoot of node 2D. And node 2D will always have a position attached to it. So we can now grab that position in a secondary variable. But this is basically the longer form of just going, I know position exists on this node 2D. So you can do this either way. Technically, there's remove that, have one line less, sure. I'm going to leave it like this because, I don't know, it might just make a little bit more sense to see. So let's refresh again. We've checked our coins. We've got our entity container, we've instantiated the scene, so it's now a thing that we can use. We've got the position that we want to spawn it at. Now I guess all we have to do is actually just spawn it, right? We've done all of our checks, we've done everything. So to spawn it, all we have to do is call the entity container, and then we can use .add child. Now, there's going to be a little bit of an issue with add child. And we kind of covered this in a previous video where I talked about how if you try to do too much in one frame, it starts to kind of go a bit ballistic and not really know how to handle it all the time. So to fix that, you want to use the method of call deferred. And that's actually what we're going to use immediately, because the entity container will be a bit grumpy if we don't use call deferred. So call deferred takes a method of string name. So to do that, we open our double quotes, and then we just type add underscore child. And then after a little comma here, what do we want to add? Well, we want to add the new coin scene. So the coin is now added. What this is going to do is add it at the root or the exact position that the entity container is. I'll go to the main scene real quick, and I go and click on the entity container. The position is this little cross down here. It's where all of our containers are. That's the root of the scene. We don't want to add the coin there. We have a position for it, right? We have the parent's position. So after we've added, or use the add child here, we actually want to call the new coin scene and then use dot position and set that equal to the parent pos or parent position. Now, this would be a lot easier if we typecasted the new coin scene as type node2d like this, because it's an offshoot of that, or it is a node2d, or it's a specific type of node2d, and then we could just use that, but we're not going to do that, trust me. And that is actually the code handled. That is literally it. That's all we need to do for a very, very simple and basic drop handler. Now I'm going to pull this aside so we can just review the script a little bit. Have the class name. We set up a preload, so we always have the scene loaded. We've got our coin counter going. We are immediately setting the coin counter to 1, so I can just test it. This is a testing value. We set up a add coin function, so we can actually go into a different script and add a coin if we need to, or when we need to. And then we set up the drop coin code, which is really simple. Is the coin count greater than 0? If not, return. Does the entity get the entity container? If it doesn't exist, return. Create the new coin, get the parent's position, and then finally entity container.call deferred, add child new coin scene. So we're adding the new coin to the actual entity container, and then we are setting its position. It might make sense to try and set the position before you add it to the scene, but you can't actually do that. You need to add it to the scene after, or you need to set the position after you've added it to the scene, right? Otherwise it doesn't exist, so it won't set the position correctly. So with that handled, I'm going to hit Control S and save. We now need to figure out where we want to do this, or where we want to actually instantiate this coin or call this code. And this is actually really simple. We could set up a signal that something could connect to and fire, or we could just kind of hard code it in its own way. And well, that's actually what we're going to do. Now, this isn't technically the best way of handling this, and we will rework this in the future. That's kind of why I love this series. We get to go through a lot of refactors and learn better ways of doing things. So we're going to go to our death handler, where we are handling death. Now, why are we doing that? Well, it already has an exported variable for a parent, and we know that the parent, in certain circumstances, will have a drop handler. Okay, but what if it doesn't? Like right now it doesn't, right? So let's actually go and add the drop handler to the patroller enemy. So we'll click on the patroller enemy, Control Shift A. We will type in drop to get the drop handler. We will add it to the patroller enemy here. Now, we are going to need a few things. We are going to need the hurt box. We'll set that up as a hurt box handler. So we're going to want an on ready for that. And then we're going to want an on ready for the drop handler, like so. Now, with those listed, we're going to mess around with the drop handler first. So let's go back to our death handler. Then in handle death right here, set up a variable, and this will be var. We'll just call it drop handler, drop underscore handler. And then we will set this equal to, we'll set the type, sorry, of drop handler, and we'll set it equal to parent. We can set it equal to parent dot drop handler, drop underscore handler. Or the safest way of doing this would be setting equal to null and then doing the setting for it. So we go drop handler equal to parent dot drop handler, not duplicate groups, drop underscore handler. There we go. And now we do a check. We go if drop handler if drop handler does not equal null, meaning the drop handler has actually been set to what it should be set to, we want to call the drop handler and then just use dot drop coin, and we are doing that in the death handling function. So I'm going to hit Control S and save. Now here's the thing that I always love. I'm going to click play. I'm going to test it, and if it breaks I'm going to be very confused. So we can still pick up coins, so we can walk over, we can get hit, we can lose coins, we can jump on their heads, and there you go. It now spawns a coin I fell off the map. Something else we're going to need to change eventually. But we are now spawning coins on death. But the problem is, they always have a coin. We don't want them to always have a coin, right? We actually want them to only get coins when they hit the player. So we might have like an enemy in the future, like a treasure goblin or something that has like many coins on it. That always starts with that amount of coins. But for right now, we're going to go to our drop handler. We're going to once again go and set in the ready function the current coin count equal to 0. And then we are going to go into the patroller enemy. Now this is the only other place where we're going to be kind of linking stuff like this, and this is why we needed the hurt box. If I go into the hurt box handler here, we have this function on area entered. This is how we're checking if this is actually colliding with a player and, you know, damaging the player, right? And that's actually all the information we need. That is like, this basically triggers the remove coin from player code. So knowing that, we can go into our patrol enemy, we can call the hurt box handler in the ready function, and then we can just use the dot area entered dot connect, and we can connect that to on underscore player underscore hit. And then we can run our own code in a new little function we create. Remember, it's going to need an area of type area2d, and it's going to be a void return type. Yeah, so now anytime the player gets collided with by an enemy, or the enemy collides with a player and, you know, damages the player, well, now we're going to want to do something, right? And that's where the drop handler comes in. We can go drop handler dot add coin and just pass in the value of 1, because that's currently how much damage we are going to be doing. Just one coin, 1 damage. So let's actually go and test this out. I'm going to go and kill an enemy first without hitting the coins. Okay, it doesn't drop anything. I'm going to go get smacked by an enemy. Going to go bounce on its head a couple of times and dropped 1 coin. Okay. Let's do another test. Let's go and see what happens if we get hit 3 times. We'll get our coin counter down to 1. And then we won't jump on its head. Go. So we're down to 1. Wait for it to come back. Don't let it accidentally kill me. And we are going to see if we go back up to 4 coins. So we only went up to 1 coin. Now that is going to be an interesting thing to fix, right? So it is hitting, but it's only going up to, well, I said 1 coin. We can count that actually by going into the drop handler. And we can do the add coin plus equals value. And we can just print the current coin count out. So let's go and print the current coin count out. Right now, the coin count should be at 0, and it shouldn't be appearing in the debugger at all. So I'm going to go and get hit. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's go and break that. Walk over the coins, and we're still only getting 1 coin, even though the coin counter is going up. Now, the reason for that is if we actually go into our drop handler, we are only ever spawning 1 coin. Now, what we can do here is we can do a for loop, and we can go for, basically for iron coin, add coin. Now, I'm not going to do that yet because there is going to be another way I want to do that in a future video. For now, we have our loop finished. And that's all I actually wanted to cover today. And as I said, I've got so much more on the way, so many more fun concepts and just more things to add to this tutorial or this series in general. And I have 2 projects I'm currently working on that I'm hoping you all love. One of them was going to be 3D, and one of them is going to be a smaller 2D game that will cover a few more of the basics just for anybody that feel like they want to brush up on more things. But for now, I will say thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Please make sure you are having a good day and a great game dev journey.